The main reason I'm doing this is to empower you guys to see how you can stand up for yourself in the face of a large company if you've been wronged by a large corporation like American Airlines. So in this video, I will share with you guys what happened to me, how I pursued legal action, all the different obstacles that I faced, and how you can take part in this case if something similar has happened to you. Speaking of which, I actually made a simple sign-up page. I'm trying to start an email list. I have a feeling this is not a one-off incident. I feel like American Airlines is actually overbooking and understaffing their flights so that any small hiccup in the schedule throws things way off and customers get the short end of the stick. So again, if this story resonates with you guys, sign up to my email list for updates on this case and how you can become a part of it if it turns into a class action lawsuit. Okay, so chamomile decongestant tea. So first things first, let me explain what happened. Back in 2024, I flew from Seattle to Boston to record some music, which, by the way, those of you guys who contributed to my music campaign back in that time, thank you again so much. You guys are amazing. But on my way back from Boston to Seattle, that's when the incident happened. So I arrived to the airport about an hour before the flight departed. So as the time approaches for our flight to start loading, we get an announcement that the flight is 30 minutes delayed. Oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you guys, the big issue here, the whole reason I started pursuing this legally was because at the time I was 7.5 months pregnant. Major point there. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, very pregnant. The flight is 30 minutes delayed, not a huge deal. Then I get another announcement, 30 more minutes, so an hour delay. Then a second hour, 3 hours, 4 hours. At this point, I'm watching the customer service line for American Airlines. It's going down the hall like 300 meters. And after 4 hours, finally my flight gets canceled and I get no instructions whatsoever about a different flight. I have to basically rebook my own flight. I'm looking at the customer service line and I'm like, there is no way I'm standing in line for another 2 hours. So here I am, super pregnant, already 5 hours at the airport. I see there's an American Airlines flight that is leaving soon to Chicago, I believe. And so I start walking up to the employee working that gate. And as I'm walking up there, that employee makes an announcement and says, "Please do not come up to me asking to get on this flight. It is fully booked. Go to the customer service line to get a new flight." By the way, the reason there was a delay in canceled flights was because it started snowing in Boston. It was in December. But I want to clarify, there were flights that were still leaving, like Delta, United, they were all operating. You could see flights leaving the, whatever it's called, the Tarac. Help me out here, guys. But anyway, so the guy makes an announcement and I'm like, I'm not standing in the customer service line. So I continue walking up to him. I come up to him and I'm like, "Sir, help me out here." I was fully dressed, just showing my pregnant stomach, guys. Anyway, so he takes one look and he's like, "Oh, honey, I got you. You are now on this flight." And I'm like, "Thank you so much." So that gave me the understanding that I'm a medically vulnerable passenger and there is a heightened sense of duty, and that employee knew it. I'm hoping I can find him as a witness. Maybe you guys can help me track him down eventually as this case progresses. But anyway, so I got on the flight. It was, I don't know how long it takes from Boston to Chicago, another like couple hours, I think. At this point, it's very late at night. I arrive in Chicago in the middle of the night. The airport is very quiet, everything is closed. And that employee told me, once you get off the flight, come up to the employee that's going to be waiting at the gate and ask them to help you navigate your next steps up until the next flight, because I was going to have about like a 6 or 7 hour layover in the middle of the night after already spending about 8 or 9 hours at airports and in airplanes. So the flight arrives in Chicago, we deplane, and I'm kind of one of the first to leave. Once I get off the plane, I was going to speak with the employee at the gate there. There were some other people talking to him and I really had to pee. So I ran across the hall to the bathroom. There was no line, so it was just a quick in and out. I come back out and the employee is gone. There are still people walking out from the plane, kind of heading in the general direction of terminal exits and connecting flights. So I'm like looking left and right, trying to find that employee, or at that point, any American Airlines employee, to get some help. I literally walked around everywhere and couldn't find anyone. I found one American Airline employee like 2 hallways down later from some other flight, and they weren't really helpful. So eventually I just sat down in some wheelchair I found and started calling American Airlines. And I was like trying to explain my situation. Hey, my flight was 4 hours late, delayed, canceled. I'm now stuck, stranded at my connecting airport for 6 or 7 hours. I don't remember exactly what it was. And I really need to sleep. I'm 7.5 months pregnant. I'm super tired, dehydrated, all the things. And unfortunately, the customer service guy said, there's really nothing we can do. You know, you can go out and look for a hotel yourself, but we don't really recommend it because, you know, you're not at the airport for a super long time and you're going to have to go back through TSA and it's going to be a bit of a wait. So you're going to get like maybe a couple hours of sleep, if that. I was like, all right, well, help me out. Is there anything you can do? I need some rest. I need some food. And the customer service guy was absolutely not helpful. I got nowhere with him. So I hung up, started walking around the airport, started looking for food. Again, everything is closed. I think it was like 1 or 2 in the morning. I got to a vending machine. It was broken. I couldn't even get water. I found this like metal bench to try to lay on, and that's not something that's comfortable to lay on when you're not pregnant. When you're super duper pregnant, even on a most comfortable bed with all the pregnancy pillows, at that stage of pregnancy, it's very hard to get comfortable. So on a cold metal bench, yeah, it's just not happening. Guys, as I'm editing here, I just wanted to point out that if you guys or even American Airlines would say like there really wasn't anything we could have done. When I was walking through the airport, I noticed there was like a group of people kind of in a secluded hallway on these little like cots or something with blankets. I didn't take a closer look to see which airline provided them with that, but that made me realize like, okay, there are things that airlines can do within an airport, like provide some kind of something. I'm pretty sure those people didn't know that they were going to be stuck at the airport and carry their own like 6 or 7, I think it was like a row of 7+ cots for people to sleep on. Anyway, thought I would just point that out. So I felt really embarrassed. People were walking by, seeing like a super pregnant lady middle of the night trying to get comfortable on the metal bench. I started experiencing really bad Braxton Hicks contractions, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could probably just start giving birth right now. I'm so stressed out and it's pretty late in the game, so anything can happen. So I got off the bench, started kind of walking around a little bit, went toward the gate where my next flight was going to be. I actually laid like on the chairs, but it was also very uncomfortable because they had the armrest, the non-movable armrest. So I kind of like squeezed between them somehow and laid a little bit. I got 0 sleep. And then finally the flight happened. I got home and that was the end. So at first I just reached out via email to American Airlines and explained to them, hey, you guys, this happened. You guys did not do a great job. I would like to receive some compensation for this. This is not okay. And they're like, oh, we're so sorry, blah, blah, blah. Here's a $100 voucher for a next flight with American Airlines. I'm like, excuse me, $100, first of all, is not going to cover anything other than like fees, basically. Second of all, I don't want to fly American Airlines anymore. So I was like, no, thank you. And then after that, I had a moment of like, all right, do I just let this go? In a sense, sort of turn the other cheek, because I am a Christian. I was kind of wrestling with this, like, should I pursue this? But then another part of me thought about, in the New Testament, there's a story about Apostle Paul, I believe, where he was beaten by Roman soldiers and then thrown into prison. And then later they found out he was a Roman citizen and wanted to quietly let him go because they were afraid. And he was like, oh, no. You guys did this publicly to me. You need to publicly apologize and make things right. So that kind of emboldened me, if that's a word, emboldened. What's the right word, guys? Empowered me, I guess, to take action and stand up for myself, especially because it was a large company. They have a lot of responsibility on their hands to take care of customers, people who are medically vulnerable. I mean, I know this sounds cheesy and maybe over the top, but they hold people's lives in their hands, safety and all that stuff. So I decided to take action. And the first route I decided to go was through small claims. Now, every state is different. And in my state, in Washington State, the maximum you can sue a person or a company for in small claims is $10,000. So this is where Chat GPT comes in. I just typed in, how do I file a small claim? And it kind of walked me through. You basically find a court near you, go on their website. They'll have forms for small claims. And I had Chat GPT help me fill that out. And then I filed that with the clerk. By the way, as I was filing it with the clerk, I actually went into labor that day. That's actually the only reason I remember exactly which day I submitted those documents for the small claim. The whole situation was super stressful. But anyway, once I submitted that, the clerk gave me a copy to serve to the defendant. I am the plaintiff and American Airlines is the defendant. And for small claims, you can actually serve them via certified mail. The postman or postwoman becomes the server, which, by the way, you might be asking, like, who do I serve? You look up registered agent for American American Airlines or whatever corporation it is you are suing. Usually that's information that can be found on a government website, like a business lookup. Usually it's like something.gov. But basically it's serving the registered agent and then taking that proof that you served them back to the clerk. The next step was the court set a hearing date. Now, again, every state is a little bit different, so that's where Chat GPT comes in handy. Just type in your state. Do be careful once you get information from Chat GPT. Double check it by actually cross-checking within like a court website. Sometimes Chat GPT does you dirty. But anyway, so I arrived on the court date and there's a bunch of cases, so you might be waiting for a while as each case is brought up before the judge. And so my turn came up and myself and the American Airlines representative stood before the judge, and the judge like read whatever the case was and was like, okay, defendant, how do you plea, or like, what would you like to say? Because the defendant gets to start by defending themselves. And the defendant said, well, we would like to file a motion to dismiss because this is in the wrong jurisdiction. Which, by the way, I actually did my homework on Chat GPT. I was like trying to get super prepared. I'm like, all right, here's my case, here's my situation. What is possible for American Airlines to respond with? And Chat GPT was like, all right, well, they can file a motion to dismiss because of the wrong jurisdiction or blah, 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 these other reasons. And I was like, okay, well, if they say that, what should I say? Chat GPT told me there is a statute that for small claims, you can sue a business in any jurisdiction that they do business in due to the nature of their business. So because an airline, you can travel all over the world, you can actually sue them anywhere where they do business, because you can't be expected in small claims. You had an incident in Chicago, in my case, you can't be expected to fly out to Chicago to sue them there. So small claims is a little bit more lenient. Anyway, so I knew this statute. So the judge, after the defendant was like, we would like to dismiss, the judge turned to me and was like, how would you like to respond? And I'm like, actually, I can sue them in any jurisdiction because of the nature of their business. And the judge, oh my gosh, guys, the judge looks at me like into my eyes and was like, can you name the statute? Like, he wanted this case to proceed because I had merit, but I needed to name like the statute number. And I got a little bit flustered and I was like, no, Your Honor, I don't know the exact statute. The case got dismissed without prejudice, meaning I can pursue it in the correct jurisdiction. So that is what I started researching after that whole scenario happened. And lo and behold, my specific case, being a medically vulnerable customer, with how everything went down, I was actually able to pursue a civil case through a federal court, which there is actually no monetary cap. And again, thanks to ChatGPT, I looked up similar cases, like medically vulnerable passengers with flight issues have won over $100,000. Oh, sorry guys, it's starting to rain. Seattle for ya. Anyway, so I started looking up more with ChatGPT, like where should I file, how to file, all of that. I'm going to kind of breeze through the fact that I filed in Seattle first because technically much of the emotional damage continued to happen in Seattle, but I ended up filing. There's like a civil cover sheet, the complaint that you write up. Again, everything. I got help with ChatGPT. The clerk at the court also helped catch a couple of little nuances, which ChatGPT kind of made errors on, but they weren't a huge deal, but the clerk caught them anyway. What was a huge deal, I actually forgot to mention this, was at one point when I was asking like, all right, are there any similar cases to mine? ChatGPT mentioned Smith versus American Airlines, 2019, case number, blah, 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 blah. So I looked at all the information that ChatGPT gave me about that case, and I was like, oh wow, this is very similar. That'll actually be a great piece of information to present American Airlines with, like, yo, this has happened before. So just keep that piece of information in mind. So anyway, that Seattle case also got dismissed without prejudice because American Airlines, again, asked to dismiss it because of the improper jurisdiction. In federal court, the rules are a little bit different, or actually probably very different. But in my case in particular, you can't, even though airlines do business all over the place, for federal court, you can't sue them wherever. You have to sue them either where the incident happened or at their headquarters. And even though ChatGPT did inform me of that, it kind of told me like, you know, since you had a lot of stuff happen and continue happening in Seattle, like the traumatic birthing experience and emotional damage and all that. By the way, the official cause for what I'm suing them for is negligence and pleading in the alternative willful and wanton conduct, which basically means they knew that I was medically vulnerable and chose not to do anything about it. Versus negligence is they were just aloof and allowed something to happen via negligence. But anyway, I tried to argue their motion to dismiss, which, by the way, everything happened via paperwork, emails, and submitting paper documents. Again, Chat GPT helped me with all of that. But there weren't like court hearings for every single thing. It was just like, you file this motion, you file this response. They file another motion, you file another response, and then the judge issues an order. So long story short, the case got again dismissed without prejudice because I needed to pursue this in the correct jurisdiction, which in my case, the best bet would be Chicago. So I was really nervous about this because I don't want to fly out to Chicago. I certainly can't afford to be going back and forth there. But the nice thing is that judges in Illinois, at least, are more lenient toward pro se plaintiffs or people who are representing themselves without a lawyer. You don't actually have to be present. A lot of things happen via email and teleconferences and Zoom video meetings and stuff like that. Anyway, so I filed again through the Illinois court, and then again with help of ChatGPT, wrote up my complaint, which was very similar to my original complaint. I mailed the documents, and then here's the tricky part. With federal court, you actually do have to serve them in person. And back when I did it in Seattle, Tacoma area, I actually had one of my family members drive out to serve them, which, funny story, served them once, according to Chat GPT, got the wrong address, served them at the wrong address, got documents back saying, sorry, American Airlines is not registered with us. So I had to refile, get it stamped, and send it to the proper address. So this is again where you have to be really careful and cross-check specific facts with Chat GPT. Like general ideas and like filling out a form are pretty easy, but like if it gives you an address, double check it online. If it gives you a case with a citation number or something, check it out online to see if it actually exists. Because remember the time when I was talking about the case that ChatGPT brought up about like Smith versus American Airlines 2019, an entire case number? Well, when I brought it back up to ChatGPT, I'm like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about this case? It was like, I never mentioned this case. So I was like, excuse me. Started scrolling back up, found the case, the part of that conversation, screenshot it, put it back in, and I'm like, here it is. And you're like, oh, in that case, that was more just like a hypothetical. If there would be like a similar situation, this is what it might look like. So I was like, oh my goodness, what in the world? The reason why I'm saying this is just ChatGPT is definitely helpful, but to a certain extent, you have to make sure to really cross-check all your facts. But anyway, so in Illinois, I got a little bit nervous, like how am I gonna serve them in person? Well, there are services that offer this. First of all, if you get your fee waived, the US Marshal can actually also serve them for free. But if your fee doesn't get waived, you need to find a service that offers to serve registered agents there. And that's what I did. I went online, found a reputable service provider, and then they served the registered agent for American Airlines in Chicago. I got notified. I was able to take those documents and the proof of service back to the clerk, filed it electronically, and everything's set into motion. Now, unlike in Seattle, in Illinois federal court, the first thing the judge did was to set up an initial, what is it called? Initial status report. Basically, the plaintiff and the defendant, American Airlines, have to meet together away from the judge and discuss the game plan, which to me sounds so weird. But we actually had to discuss a game plan of like what motions they're going to be filing, what I'm complaining about, what the amount is, how much time we think we need for everything. That was a little bit nerve-wracking to speak with the lawyers. But again, I did as much prep work as I could with ChatGPT, like, hey, initial status report, what does that mean? How should I prepare? What kind of things should I watch out for in their wording that might corner me later on? ChatGPT walked me through all of that stuff. So we were able to meet, talk about some points. I was able to point out some things that I was like, oh, I'm not okay with that wording, etc., etc. And then the judge has a conference hearing to discuss what we discussed. Funny story, not funny at all at the time. I set up an alarm for the conference hearing with the judge, and I was very proud of myself for noting that there was a time difference. And then I get notified one morning from the lawyer representing American Airlines, hey, are you going to be at the meeting? I looked at the document and it was like, I got the time right, but not the date. I was 1 day late. So I went to the court website, looked up the phone number for that specific judge's court deputy, called right away. I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I missed that first meeting. I got the time difference right, but I just missed the date. What should I do? And they were very kind and considerate. They were like, well, I can just pass it on to the judge that you missed it at this point. Since you guys agreed on everything, everything is set, and we'll just give you some definitive dates for when everything is going to be due. Or you can also email the judge. And I was like, if you can pass it along, long, please. My sincerest apologies, but I will also send an email. So I did just that. And at this point, where we're at is the judge set some deadlines for the discovery process, basically when we have to present our witnesses, who we plan to use as witnesses, any documents we're gonna need. So that's where I'm at right now. Don't forget, you guys, if you want to stay updated on how this case goes, sign up to my email list, or if something similar to this has happened to you, specifically with American Airlines, sign up to that email list and I will send you instructions on what to do next, depending on how this case pans out and depending on your guys' response. If this turns into a class action lawsuit, I'll be able to reach out to you guys with more information and how you can take part in this. Alrighty, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will keep you updated.